we're starting now. Thank you for taking the time out to join us. I'd like you to speak to the theme of this year's conference, Transition, Transformation, and Sustainable Institutions. And this is happening at a time when Nigeria is going into presidential elections, and there's been a lot of so many robust conversations about building sustainable institutions. INEC comes to focus at a time like this. What are your thoughts?
Well, frankly speaking, I see the larger issue being transformation. And to my knowledge, I'm not sure that the issue of transition, either from the perspective of the MBA or even from Nigeria's perspective, should be looked at simply from the perspective of elections. Okay? At the end of the day, we are looking for economic transformation. If you look at the indices around the quality of life, in Africa and particularly in Nigeria, you can see that there is room for great improvement. And so for advanced nations, you are seeing incremental progress in life improvement because there's not much more that they can do. When people, live to the age of 80 and 90, do we want them to, But in our case, there's real room. So if Nigerians are averaging 55 years, you can take them to 80 years. And that's a major transformation just in terms of, the length of life. And if people are seeking educational opportunities and, only small fractions of them can attain it, if we can, give every Nigerian the option of, tertiary education, that's transformation. And I think those are the issues. And, what I spoke about was that, look, there was a lead speaker who brought a number of relevant, what I call intermediate economic and social indicators or issues that have to be addressed in order for Nigeria to get there. But I said that there was a big omission because the fundamental issue is one of leadership. Leadership in public institutions, leadership in the areas of governance, and ensuring that we have a critical mass of great leaders who can do those things, around education, who can do those things, around the economy. We don't have enough of them. And certainly we don't have them in the numbers required to face the type of constraints that Nigeria has. And that's what we should focus on.
Now, one of the other topics that will be being discussed is the rule of law and security. Mm-hmm. Now, for investors, especially foreign investors, they need to know that they're coming into a country where the rule of law is upheld at every point in time. Now, at the beginning of the conference, there were comments made by the president where he talked about the fact that, yes, the rule of law should be supreme and apply across the board, but there are times when national interests must come forward or must be put as a priority. And I spoke to a number of analysts, and they said that they didn't think that was a good signal, especially for foreign investors who need to know that when they come here and they run into trouble, they need to know that they will get, that they can run to the justice system and get proper hearing. So I'm just thinking, what are your thoughts in terms of how we are upholding the rule of law and the kind of signals that we may be sending to investors?
Well, let me first of all say that I'll be last commentator to say that national interest is not relevant. National interest is always relevant. What is important to one nation may not necessarily be important to another. Times differ, etc., etc. But what I will also say is that as far as any nation is concerned, you must prove and establish for all stakeholders that enforcement of contract is sacrosanct. That is what investors are concerned about. So they will do their homework and they will understand what your national priorities are, and they will determine whether those priorities align with theirs, okay? But every nation across the world, all of these nations, 195 of us competing for investment, both from local investors and international investors, are competing amongst other things on our ability to ensure that if I enter into a contract, which is fundamental to existence, that the terms of that contract can be enforced.
As a business leader, how concerned are you about the economic momentum that we appear to have lost? The Vice President talked about the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan today. He highlighted the achievements and how the government is implementing it. I just spoke to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, and he said that they may take a second look at that. Actually, from time to time, they actually do take a look at the document to tweak it here and there. So as a business leader, what would you recommend? What are those areas that you see within the economy that you could perhaps recommend that we should pay more attention to?
Look, with our own economy in the state that it's in, and this, I'm not just talking about recession or emerging from recession. Our economic realities are such that our only solution is to attract capital. Whether it's domestic capital, foreign capital, we have to attract massive doses of capital. Capital enough to foster growth at a rate that is higher than our population growth rate, okay, that's one, okay, and at a rate that would finance this huge gap that we have in infrastructure and other things. So the key issue is, does government in any way have the capacity to fill that investment gap, okay, that is Nigeria's issue? And the answer is no. So you don't have a choice. You have to, attract, investments from the private sector. You have to speak their language. You have to address their concerns, and you have to embrace them, okay? That is where we have to do a lot of work.
Would you say, what recommendations do you have? Because we go the way of public-private partnerships. We don't have a very good record where that is concerned, but that is still the way to go, according to many business leaders. What are your thoughts in terms of how we should maybe look again, a second look at the way we structure our PPPs?
Well, PPP, I think, is specific to infrastructure. I don't think that PPP is necessary for several aspects of economic endeavor. Okay? But if you want to speak to PPP, all right, let me tell you a story. In India, there's a private sector individual, and in the area of technology. I remember this individual because 3 of them partnered to form a company, and that company became one of the first Indian unicorns. In other words, billion-dollar companies. And the 3 partners ended up, becoming very wealthy men. Now, India has always struggled with this idea of national ID, just like Nigeria has. Okay? And can you believe that I think 12 years ago or 13 years ago, this individual, and I use the time scale so that you understand that India has passed through a number of changes in government since then. This individual woke up and said, I have a dream, right? And that using my resources and my knowledge, I will partner with government, any government, okay, to ensure that all Indians have a national ID. And India, now you understand the population reality of that. You're talking about over 1 billion people. And they started this process. And this gentleman, working in partnership with the public sector and specifically certain Indian civil servants, managed a project which today has 100% of all Indians with a digital ID.